I was sitting in the dark of my father's study, clutching a folder that proved my entire marriage was a lie, while my wife laughed in the next room with the man she thought would help her spend my family's fortune. The sound of her laughter, that melodic, practiced sound I used to adore, felt like a serrated blade across my nerves, because I knew what was in her glass, what was in her heart, and exactly what she'd been saying about me when she thought I wasn't listening. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why that night destroyed everything, I need to take you back to where it started, back to when I was blind enough to believe that Julianne loved me for more than just my last name. From the outside, Julianne and I were the couple everyone wanted to be. We lived in a sprawling estate in Greenwich, the kind of place with a name like The Willows and a driveway long enough to make guests feel small. I'm the sole heir to the Sterling Trust, a family fortune built over 4 generations of shipping and real estate. Julianne was the perfect Sterling wife. She was elegant, she ran the most successful charity galas in the county, and she always knew exactly how to tie my tie so the knot was perfectly centered. Our Saturday mornings were a ritual: espresso on the veranda, the New York Times spread out between us, and the quiet comfort of 10 years of marriage. That should have been my first warning: the comfort. Looking back, Julianne wasn't just comfortable, she was settled. She treated our life like a job she'd already mastered. There was one specific moment about 6 months ago at my father's 75th birthday party. He's a titan of a man, but his health had started to dip. As he coughed into a handkerchief, I saw Julianne's eyes. They didn't show concern. They showed a flicker of calculation, like she was checking a watch. She leaned in and whispered, "He's looking quite frail tonight, isn't he, Elias? We should really make sure the estate papers are in order, for his sake." I brushed it off as her being practical. But what came next was so much worse. It started with the consultations. We were planning a massive renovation on the east wing of the estate, and Julianne insisted on hiring a specific architect, a man named Marcus Thorne. Marcus was younger than me, sharp-edged, with the kind of expensive intensity that screams new money trying to look old. At first, it was just late-night meetings about blueprints and marble swatches. But then the hyper-specific details started to feel off. I'd come home and find the house smelling like a cologne I didn't wear, something heavy, with notes of sandalwood and arrogance. I found a receipt in the trash for a jewelry store I'd never visited, for a repair on a necklace I'd never seen Julianne wear. When I asked her about it, she didn't even blink. "Oh, that? It was just a clasp on an old heirloom my mother gave me. I didn't want to bother you with it." She smiled, kissed my cheek, and for a second I felt like the crazy one. If that was all I found, maybe I could have let it go. But then I checked the mileage on her SUV. Julianne claimed she was spending her Tuesdays at the community garden in the city, but the odometer was telling a different story: an extra 80 miles every single week. I did something I'm not proud of. I put a tracker on her car. The next Tuesday, she wasn't at a garden. She was at a high-end loft in a district Marcus Thorne just happened to have an office in. I felt the air leave my lungs. I sat in my car, 3 blocks away, staring at the little red dot on my phone screen. I wanted to storm in there. I wanted to kick the door down and scream. But a cold, hard voice in the back of my mind told me to wait. This wasn't just about an affair. This was Julianne. She was too smart to risk everything for a fling unless there was a bigger play. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a one-time thing. This was a transition.
I went home and did some digging of my own. I didn't hire a private investigator. I'm a Sterling. I have access to the family's forensic accountants. I asked them to look into our renovation budget. What they found made my blood turn to ice. Julianne hadn't just been meeting Marcus for sex. She'd been overpaying his firm by hundreds of thousands of dollars, money that was then being kicked back into a private offshore account in her maiden name. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was embezzling from my family to build a nest egg for her life after me. The final blow came 2 weeks later. I found her burner phone hidden inside a hollowed-out book in the library, ironically, a copy of The Great Gatsby. I read the messages. They weren't just romantic. They were predatory. One from Marcus read, "How much longer until the old man kicks it? I'm tired of playing the contractor." Julianne's reply, "The doctors say any day now. Once the inheritance hits the joint account, we're gone. Elias is too distracted by his grief to notice a thing. He's pathetic, Marcus. He thinks I'm his soulmate. Just a few more weeks of playing the grieving daughter-in-law and we're set for life. I sat on the floor of that library for 3 hours, the silence of the house pressing in on me. The woman I'd shared a bed with for a decade thought I was pathetic. She was literally waiting for my father to die so she could rob me blind and run off with her architect. I knew exactly what I was going to do, but I had to be patient. I had to be a better actor than she was. For the next 10 days, I was the perfect husband. I brought her flowers, I talked about our future and how much I appreciated her support during my father's illness. I even sat through another dinner with Marcus, watching him eye my wife while I poured him a glass of my father's finest 1945 Bordeaux. I smiled at him. I thanked him for his hard work on the estate. Inside, I was a hollow shell of rage, but on the outside, I was the distracted, pathetic Elias she expected. She had no idea what was coming. The trap was set for my father's retirement and legacy gala. My father wasn't dead, by the way. He'd actually recovered significantly, but we let the rumors of his decline persist. We invited everyone, the board of directors, the local elite, and of course, Marcus Thorne. Julianne was radiant in a deep emerald silk dress, looking every bit the queen in waiting. She kept squeezing my hand, whispering about how proud she was of the Sterling legacy. Halfway through the light, I stood up for the toast. The room went silent. I looked at Julianne, who was smiling up at me with that practiced, beautiful mask. "Friends, family," I began, my voice steady. "As many of you know, my father has decided it's time to settle the future of the Sterling Trust. There has been a lot of talk about inheritance, about who will carry the mantle of this family's fortune." I saw Julianne lean forward, her eyes gleaming. Marcus was standing near the bar, trying to look nonchalant, but he was vibrating with anticipation. "Julianne has been my rock," I said, and the room offered a collective awe. She's been so concerned about the estate papers, so focused on our future together. And she was right. We needed a change. I signaled to our family attorney, who stepped forward with a stack of documents. "Tonight, I'm announcing a last-minute restructuring of the Sterling Trust. You see, I realize that wealth can sometimes attract the wrong intentions. It can make people act out of character. So with my father's full blessing, I have officially signed over my entire inheritance, every building, every ship, every cent, into a charitable foundation that will be managed by a board of directors. I will remain as a consultant with a modest fixed salary, but the family fortune as a private asset is gone." The color didn't just leave Julianne's face. It was like someone had pulled a plug. She went gray. Her glass of champagne trembled so violently that it spilled over her hand. "And," I continued, my voice dropping an octave, "since Julianne and I signed a very specific prenuptial agreement that grants her a percentage of my personal wealth, which is now effectively zero, I thought tonight would also be the best time to hand her these." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. I didn't hand it to her. I laid it on the table right in front of her. "Those are the divorce papers, Jules, along with the transcripts from your burner phone and the audit reports of the renovation kickbacks. I've already contacted the authorities about the embezzlement, by the way. I believe they're waiting for Marcus in the foyer." The silence in the room was absolute. It was the kind of silence that rings in your ears. Marcus tried to bolt, but 2 of our security guards, men who had worked for my father for 20 years, stepped into his path. Julianne's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked like a landed fish, gasping for air in a room full of people who were now staring at her with pure disgust. "Elias," she finally managed to choke out, her voice a thin, ragged ghost of itself. You can't. Where's team? You're being impulsive. You're hurting yourself just to spite me." I leaned down, my face inches from hers. I could smell her expensive perfume, the one she wore for him. "I'm not hurting myself, Julianne," I whispered, loud enough for the front row to hear. "I'm finally free. I'd rather be a man with a modest salary than a pathetic billionaire with a wife who's counting the seconds until my father dies. You wanted the Sterling fortune? Well, you're looking at it. It's going to build hospitals and schools. You're leaving with exactly what you brought into this marriage. Nothing." She gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to the envelope, then to the crowd of people who were witnessing her total annihilation.
The mask didn't just crack, it shattered. She started to scream, a high, shrill sound that had none of her usual grace. She called me every name in the book. She tried to throw her drink at me, but I simply stepped back, watching her transform from a socialite into a desperate, cornered animal. The security team escorted her out as she was still shouting about how she deserved that money. Marcus was let out in handcuffs shortly after. I stayed. I finished my toast. I even had a piece of cake. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Because of the evidence of her financial fraud, the prenup was reinforced, and she didn't get a single dime. Last I heard, she's living in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a part of town she used to scoff at, working a retail job just to keep the lights on. Marcus is facing 5 years for corporate fraud and theft. People ask me if I regret giving up the money. I tell them the same thing every time. I didn't give up my life. I bought it back. I live in a small house by the coast now. No name on the gate, no long driveway, just the sound of the ocean and the knowledge that when someone looks at me, they see the man, not the bank account. I lost a fortune, but I found my soul, and that's a trade I'd make every single day of the week. Julianne thought she was playing the long game, but she forgot one thing. You can't inherit a legacy you weren't loyal to. And in the end, she left the way she lived, with nothing but the cold, hard truth of who she really was.